2 days before the Queen died, Liz Truss, as you'll recall, became Prime Minister. And just after the Queen's funeral, she announced a mini budget in an attempt to address rising costs of living issues and, of course, the energy crisis in the UK. Among the plans in that budget was the abolition of the top marginal tax rate in the UK, that's 45 pence in the pound, and a whole lot of other changes to tax thresholds and things like corporate tax. Now, having seen off Rishi Sunak, all of this was sold as a return to traditional Conservative principles. But that mini budget was not so mini in ideas and sent the British economy into turmoil. Some Conservative MPs, like former Minister Michael Gove, openly taking aim. Overnight, in response, Truss and her Chancellor of the Exchequer, like the Treasurer there, Kwasi Kwarteng, they've been forced into a humiliating backdown, dumping the changes to the top tax rate and other things in order to stave off talk from some on the backbench that they want to change Prime Minister again. God help us. Here was the Chancellor, under pressure, addressing the Conservative Party faithful in recent hours.
I know the plan put forward only 10 days ago has caused a little turbulence. I get it. I get it. We are listening and have listened. We will get Britain moving, we will deliver lower taxes for you and your family, and we will grow our economy. I know we can achieve that goal. With grit, with drive and with determination, we can meet the challenges of this new era.
Joining me now, former Coalition Minister, Australia's former High Commissioner to the UK, and now National Security Professor at the ANU, George Brandis, live from Canberra. Well, George Brandis, you are a good mate of Liz Truss. How has she played this? Because within 10 days, the centrepiece of this mini budget has been dumped.
Well, I take issue with your characterisation, Peter, of it as the centrepiece of the mini budget. The mini budget contained a very wide range of measures, and the one piece that was dumped, partly in response to a savage market reaction, partly because the political optics were all wrong, was the reduction of the top marginal tax rate. But to put it in context, the total value of these tax cuts that Kwasi Kwarteng, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, foreshadowed was £45 billion. The proportion of that £45 billion of tax reduction and tax relief that was represented by the reduction of the top marginal rate from 45 to 40 was £2 billion. So I think it's important to remember the context here, that there was a reversal of one element, which as a proportion of the entire package was in fact a relatively small proportion, but of course it's the one that attracted all the attention.
Just on that, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I looked at those numbers overnight in the UK Telegraph and I agree with you. In the whole scheme of things, it was such a minor fiscal impact from that part of the policy. And if that's the case, why could she have toughed it out? I mean, one of the criticisms she faced was from the time of that announcement and the rocky markets, her critics said Liz Truss didn't get out there and argue the toss. She didn't get out there and defend her policy. She basically disappeared for about a week and then it was left defenceless and then it had to go.
Well, look, Peter, I'm not in the United Kingdom at the moment. I was until quite recently. So I'm not in a position to comment on that. But can I make this observation? And you will, from your own days working in Parliament House, remember this, that occasionally a government does decide that it needs to reverse a policy decision which is perceived to have been a mistake. Tony Abbott did that on occasions, I recall. All Prime Ministers at one time or another do. If you're going to execute a U-turn, better to do it swiftly and get it behind you fast.
Fair enough. I liked the policy. I love cutting tax, so I would have loved to see her into the fray and defend it a bit more rather than sort of run. What's this talk on the backbench reported in the British papers that people are doing the numbers to roll her? I know Michael Gove, a bit of a Peter, player, has been out there kicking things around. She's safe, surely. They'd be crazy to change PM.
And they won't. I mean, that is being fed to the British newspapers by people who are disgruntled by the fact, Michael Gove foremost among them, no doubt, disgruntled by the fact that they used to be in cabinet and no longer are. I mean, Michael Gove, who is a very talented and ambitious and Machiavellian politician, was effectively the leader of the campaign against Liz Truss. He was the person who declared himself to be the leader of the anyone but Truss camp. They are historical enemies in the internal warfare of Conservative Party politics. It's no surprise at all. And, you know, as we both know from our own experience working in politics, if you want to get a story up in the media, all you need to do is have a disgruntled former cabinet minister start briefing journalists that something might happen and they'll get a headline. This will, in my view, settle down.
All right. Well, we'll stick with it on that case. Let's go. Put your old hat on as Attorney General, and obviously a lot of relevance to your current role at the Australian National University. This debate about bringing back Islamic fighters, the brides of jihadis, some themselves may be involved in terror from overseas. We know there's talk of them facing control orders and possible charges in Australia. What's your view about bringing them home?
Well, I think that there are two considerations that have to be borne in mind here. The overwhelmingly important consideration, of course, is to keep Australians safe. So considerations of public safety and national security have to be predominant. But we can't be blind to the fact that, particularly where there are children concerned, there are genuine humanitarian issues as well. And a lot of the wives of the jihadis, they were unwilling, effectively hostages, to be taken by their husbands to the Middle East. Now, not all of them, by the way. I'm not saying that's the case with all of them, but I'm sure in the case of some of them, it's true. And the poor children, some of whom were babies, had no say in the matter. So I think what the government needs to do is to be guided every step of the way here by the advice of ASIO and by the advice of the national security professionals. And if it's their judgment, their professional judgment, that there is a negligible or a non-existent risk in relation to certain individuals, women, mothers and their children, then the humanitarian considerations no doubt will come to the fore. But we start from the proposition that nothing should be done unless ASIO is satisfied that there is not a risk to the safety of Australians.
George Brandis, thank you for your time.